Welcome to Endeavour's Founder Stories, the podcast that delves into the origin tales of groundbreaking startups and the visionary entrepreneurs behind them. In this episode, we spotlight Tinashe Ruzane, co-founder and CEO of FlexClub, a company that's redefining car ownership in emerging markets. FlexClub offers a revolutionary approach to car access through flexible, all-inclusive subscription plans. By partnering with trusted brands like Avis and Europcar, FlexClub enables members to select their preferred vehicle, top up their account, and hit the road, all without the hassles of traditional financing, insurance, or maintenance. We sat down with Tinashe to explore his roots and the journey from his tenure at Uber to the inception of FlexClub.
Growing up in Pretoria, I was always quite fascinated with the idea of vehicles or how people move, and I always wanted to explore the possibilities there, and I started tinkering with the problem of vehicle access, cars or moving around the city, influenced the way I think about the world today. One of them being, how much of a milestone it was every time the family got a new car, how celebrated it was, but it wasn't something that was shared. The other being something as basic as catching the bus to school. But I always felt that it was super archaic that I'd have to kind of jump on the bus with a coupon booklet and the bus driver would have to punch it. But growing up in that environment kind of gave me a taste of all the problems that could be solved and how people move. And that's really where the love started. So when I was 19 years old, going back to this story about the bus and how close it was to my day-to-day experience, I came across a random documentary on the Oyster card in London, and I thought, that's fantastic. I wish I had an Oyster card equivalent that I could use on the bus. And so I started doing a bit of research. I guess I was never shy to explore new things, learn new things, teach myself new things. And I thought I could teach myself enough and try to see if I could get in front of someone in the city of Pretoria that would listen to me. And I emailed the mayor of Pretoria. I found her email address, and surprisingly she responded and invited me to come present my idea to her. I think it only took 5 minutes for her to realize that this is a 19-year-old in an oversized suit that he's probably inherited from a family member. I was so nervous, but I presented to her my slideshow on what I thought could be done with the bus system in Pretoria and how we could transform and make transport a bit more efficient. I had researched and had met with a few different companies, security companies, a bunch of different folks that would kind of stitch together the solution. And she was gracious enough to give me the time, treat me with respect. That built my confidence. That even as a 19-year-old, she took me seriously. I didn't have the chops to be in that room. And for me, that was sort of enough to then have the confidence to continue to ask questions of the world, not wait for permission. And from there, that was very transformative for me. I continue to do that. I sort of defaulted, as far as studying is concerned, to what my parents did. My parents were accountants. In fact, I wanted to be a computer engineer, but it wasn't clear to me that I loved all the other pieces about computer engineering beyond just the software. And so I figured, this is what people do to make money. I'm going to do that, and studied finance. But eventually kind of delved off the traditional course after my undergrad, tried to build my own curriculum, if you will. And that's how I got led to different things over the years. I'll maybe just state that the title entrepreneur feels a little uncomfortable for me to this day. I think I've always thought about myself as a problem solver. I'm just the type of person that gets fascinated and obsessed with a problem, and then I can't let it go, like a dog with a bone. And I've always explored that. And when I was 20, I decided to import a scooter from China to see if I could convince other students to maybe buy scooters as another mode of transport. Yeah, it wasn't because I was trying to be an entrepreneur, because I wanted to just see if I could solve this problem. I needed a better way to get to university, and surely others would want the same. And that was really my journey, but I had to kind of get a real job, to earn my chops. And so after finishing studies, I worked in manufacturing, management consulting, and then for a large scale-up business, Uber. And only after I'd had that sort of decade-long experience, I had the confidence to then say, I'm happy to jump over and quote-unquote be an entrepreneur. I mean, I say to my family and friends that Uber was likely the greatest education I've had. It was the equivalent of being in an Ivy League environment where I know that my family would never afford to kind of put me in an Ivy League environment. I was rubbing shoulders with, in my opinion, some of the greatest minds in mobility and technology. That also just built up this confidence to be in rooms in Silicon Valley or wherever else and not feel like an outsider. I always had imposter syndrome, but I think the lessons that I had there were that Uber would back anyone who had conviction. If you had conviction around an idea, they'd give you the resources, the tools to explore that. And that resulted in the organization just being very fast. I think that's one of the major advantages of Uber in the early days, was incredibly fast. The rate at which was evolving and developing. And I've tried to kind of bring that through into how I think about solving problems now. Is speed and conviction mean a lot. There's very little, in a large corporate organization, you might kind of find that people gravitate towards consensus thinking. Do we all agree? All in favor? Then let's go ahead. Where there's a lot of non-consensus thinking happening inside Uber, and that was celebrated. There used to be this value within Uber, let builders build. I think that was why it was such a transformative place for me to learn, because I always felt like a builder. I wanted to tinker and build, and I've really respected that and want to preserve that in the way I think about the business and our own team today. Part of my role at Uber eventually evolved to me being the custodian of vehicle access for Uber drivers across Europe, Middle East, Africa. And so I was building, Uber kind of gave me the license. Again, I was often put in these environments where I didn't have the credibility to be there necessarily, but given the chance, I would always try my darndest to prove myself. And I got to a point where I was heading up vehicle solutions for Uber across that region. There were over 1 million drivers in the region, trying to figure out how can we get access to cars for these drivers? Why is it so difficult? What are all the products that are available? And I felt that there needed to be a bit more flexibility in how we think about vehicle access. It was either you get a loan, or there's leases, there's rental. There's a community of people that have been excluded from this access. So could I not be involved in cultivating the ecosystem that would allow this community, and that at the time, Uber drivers, to access vehicles more flexibly on their terms, not be at the mercy of exploitation. And that was sort of the original vision. And thankfully, it's aged well enough that it's relevant beyond just the Uber driver. So today we're very focused on the consumer, just the everyday South African. And still, I think the same principles hold true. There's a community of people out there that need different types of access to vehicles, that needs to be more flexible, speaks to their lifestyle. And that's really where the name came from. The exercise, I went through a few different words, trying to mash up different words. And one key word that was sort of central to what I was trying to achieve was unlocking flexibility in how people access cars. And so flex became sort of the first root of the word. And for me, it became non-negotiable that flex had to be represented somewhere. But then thinking through, so another central theme was this idea of a community of people that are excluded from access. And that idea of a community, a tribe, led me to club. And I like the idea of thinking about customers as members, where they're celebrated, just like you have these sort of prestigious golf clubs or things like that. Why couldn't they be seen like that, celebrated, not as a community that's shunned? And so combine the two into FlexClub, and that's how it came to be. So I think the feeling that we really try to cultivate is that celebratory moment, the new car, what it means beyond the car, what it means for the family, for the individual, when it goes right, because it can definitely go wrong. But when it goes right, how great could it be for the customer? And that moment, when you see that happen with the customer, and I've seen it through different lenses over the years, whether it's the Uber driver getting a car and they bring the entire family to come pick up the car, or whether it's just the young student that doesn't have other access, but now they've graduated, they can get a car and they've just got this new job. So there's a very tangible experience that we can make available to the team. Even just looking at our Google reviews, that's something that we take a lot of pride in, and we celebrate those reviews. someone saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe how easy this was. Thank you so much, FlexClub, you've changed my life. Now I've got a car, I love my new wheels. It gives me so much joy to know that that's something we're cultivating, and it's an experience that I also appreciate, I can relate to.
Like many startups, FlexClub faced significant hurdles during the pandemic, yet adversity sparked innovation. Tinashe discusses how crisis became a catalyst for reinvention, leading to new investments, strategic partnerships, and a renewed vision for the company's future.
That moment, I was actually expecting my second child. I was facing bankruptcy. And that was probably the toughest moment because I was very much in the mind of like the success of FlexClub was the success of me. And if I fail at this, then I'm doomed, I'm a failure. I have to kind of walk around with my tail between my legs. I won't have the license to solve problems anymore because no one will believe I can do it. That was tough. I had to step away, from that. I did something completely different, while I was trying to revive it. And fortunate that, I had some shareholders that, took the time to call me to say, look, we don't think you're the failure. You're not the problem here. This can happen to anyone. If you want to go again and you have conviction, we'll back you. And a handful of them said that, and that was enough for me to say, fine, I'll do it again. And then I was fortunate enough to meet Idan. One of them introduced me to Idan. We hit it off, and like all that excitement, obsession about the problem just rushed back into me. And we're thankful that this is where we are now. The business is on a very, very exciting trajectory. Many lessons learned. I've changed my ideology. I feel like I've changed my religion as far as business is concerned. There's the Silicon Valley US mindset, and then there's the mindset that's appropriate for Africa and South Africa. And it's something I'm digesting. I'm building up my own sort of theories on that. Where's the journey there? How many South African entrepreneurs look at the Zuckerbergs and the Silicon Valley sort of outliers and say, that's who I want to be? How many of them actually appreciate that there's a different style to how we should be building here because of the nature of our environment? So even to my wife, it wasn't so long ago that I said to her, I've just realized I still want to build a big house. I just don't want to build it with timber anymore. It just means that it's going to take me longer to build the house. Brick and mortar. I'm not going to have a prefab timber house that's going to be up next week. And that's sort of how I think about sort of the Silicon Valley mindset to like my mindset now and the way we're building now, which is great. It just agrees with my spirit, my personality. But yes, there was a moment I thought it was over. I think that it takes, I wouldn't take away the crisis that I went through, because without that crisis, I wouldn't have had this reflection. I would have still been playing that game. Constantly raise capital, make sure I appeal to the US investor. And when they don't share my conviction, I'm in no man's land. And I think it's interesting. I think like our co-founding team feels very much like a three-legged pot. We can't do this without one of those legs. So myself, Idan, and Howie, I think we all bring something very different, and it's great that I get this opportunity to live my greatest creative expression with these peers who have a different perspective, and we can toy around with these ideas and then commit to then try a different angle next week. We share a lot in just at least philosophically, which is great. It's something that I've really enjoyed this time around.
At the helm of FlexClub is a trio of forward-thinking founders, Tinashe Ruzane, serving as CEO and bringing sharp strategic vision, Idan Jaan, the COO, known for his operational drive and entrepreneurial rigor, and Howard Sommerfeld, the CTO, leading the company's tech innovation. Together, they've built a resilient leadership team, one that's reimagining mobility with clarity, confidence, and collaboration.
There are things that would make me rattled, that don't make me rattled anymore, and I think it's just a function of my confidence, building up over time. So there's some rooms where I'm still uncomfortable. Like I'm very aware that I don't have the same chops to be in this room like the other people that are sitting around the table, but I don't feel less than. But sometimes I would maybe be more reserved, as I navigate my way through, and that might be sort of the imposter syndrome kind of taking effect, where I'm still trying to convince myself that I'm worthy of being in the room. But there certainly are still rooms, and the way I think about these rooms is places that I've never ventured before, where I don't know enough, but I'd love to learn. The one thing that's always helped me is I always kind of have the conversation with myself, what's the worst that can happen? They're gonna call me stupid, an idiot. As long as I don't believe them, then I'm fine to continue to ask those questions. And I just love the feeling of learning something new. And that for me is that feeling of being a novice. And a lot of people along my journey have celebrated that with me. So I've been fortunate enough to build up the confidence in my learning journey over time. I do think there are certain things that I'm very opinionated about. I love the sort of quote, strong opinions loosely held. I try to always, maintain that sort of ethos in the way I think about my ideas. Is I have to fall in love with them. I have to be obsessed with them, have high conviction. And I think generally as a co-founding team, we share that. Is the things that we really believe in, we're prepared to fight for. But if someone emerges with data to prove that we're wrong, we're not going to continue fighting for the sake of fighting. You must be prepared to change your opinion. And I think generally speaking, anyone in the business could disagree with me as long as they felt that they had the data to back it up, why I'm wrong. Because like I said, I do still enjoy being a student, learning. And I hope that's something that we can continue to foster as we grow.
Beyond the boardroom, Tinashe is a devoted family man and sports enthusiast, now based in Amsterdam, a city renowned for its cycling culture, expansive parks, and active lifestyle. He finds inspiration and balance in the outdoors. Tinashe shares how the city's vibrant energy complements his roles as a father and entrepreneur, offering him avenues for relaxation and reflection amidst his dynamic journey.
Maybe I'm always problem solving, just different problems, like trying to figure out how to get toddlers to cooperate. Yeah, on the personal side, that's something I take a great amount. I draw a lot of joy and energy from. It's the time I spend with my family. I'm quite private. I love the downtime where I could literally keep my phone away for the entire weekend because I'm immersed in play and time with my kids and my family. So that really energizes me. I'm an introvert by default. That's sort of my standard space. So I do draw energy, from solitude as well. And it's not that I don't enjoy being around people, but I am spending energy when I'm with people. But yeah, my family is maybe the exception to that, in that I'm energized by being around them. So yeah, I try to be very active and conscious when I'm not, playing entrepreneur. Yeah, that's true when the weather permits. But I've recently taken to paddle. I guess it is a sport that's taking all over South Africa as well. So I enjoy that because it's quite social. There's a group of friends that I can do that with. Historically, or in the past, I'd have more time to play golf, but I haven't done so in a very long time. And they actually say that paddle's the married man's golf, because it only takes an hour and a half or 2 hours max instead of the full day, and you never know what happens on the 19th hole. So those two, I think, have always been, maybe golf in particular, has always been something I went to, but paddle more recently as far as sports concerned. I've grappled with how to maintain perspective when things get tough over the years, because there have been many tough moments, and the toughest piece for me has been separating my identity and my sense of achievement and success from the success and achievement of the business. If the business is doing well, does that mean I'm great? When the business is not doing well, does that mean I'm failing? It's an incredibly tough challenge. However, I think more recently I've managed to, after some reflection, get to the ideology or perspective that I'm really just someone journeying with a problem, and my solution will lose fidelity over time. Like everything in life, everything falls apart. Entropy is something that happens to us, our bodies, the buildings we live in, and the business no different. And that entropy shouldn't be a reflection of my own effort or my own ambition. And so I've tried to remind myself, as the weeks, the months, the years go by, that I'm just, trying a different, angle, different approach at, at building a solution that solves the problem, and ensuring that's not something I think, or I'm too tough on myself on.
Tinashe Ruzane's journey with FlexClub exemplifies the resilience and innovation that Endeavour champions. As we continue to support high-impact entrepreneurs, stories like Tinashe's inspire a global movement of change-makers. Thank you for joining us on Endeavour's Founder Stories, where entrepreneurial dreams drive real-world impact.